Have you ever heard a sound that wasn't really there? A high-pitched ringing in your ears that nobody else seems to notice? Well, that's tinnitus. And for millions of people, it is a constant, incredibly frustrating reality. But here's a wild thought. What if a huge clue to understanding this thing is hiding in a brain chemical we normally link with our mood? We're about to dig into a connection that is, well, pretty surprising. And this is the central puzzle. The big paradox that has had neuroscientists scratching their heads. The very same chemical pathway we use to treat depression could, somehow, be the exact same one that's cranking up the volume on this phantom noise. It's a real dilemma, and the stakes for patients are incredibly high. Okay, so before we dive into the brain chemistry, let's just get on the same page about what we're talking about when we say tinnitus. Because this is so much more than just a minor annoyance. The most important word to focus on here is phantom. This isn't a sound coming from the outside world. No, it's a neurological glitch. It's generated from inside the brain's own auditory system. It's basically a signal without a source, and you can imagine how maddening that must be. And that's why this is such a serious condition. It's been called an unrelenting anguish. And that's not just about the sound. The constant noise is so often tangled with severe mental health struggles, things like depression and anxiety. The two problems really seem to go hand in hand.
And, it's that very connection to mental health that leads us right into the middle of a really complicated scientific mystery, with a very confusing chemical culprit right at the center of it all, serotonin.
So just think about this for a second. Let's say a patient has both depression and tinnitus. The go-to first-line treatment for depression is almost always an SSRI. And what do SSRIs do? They boost serotonin in the brain. Seems like a pretty logical step to take, right? And there it is. That is the million-dollar question. What if the very treatment that's supposed to be bringing relief is actually making the phantom sound louder? This is the exact problem that a team of neuroscientists decided they had to figure out. This quote from neuroscientist Zheng Quan Tang really says it all, doesn't it? The scientific community had a hunch. They suspected serotonin was a key player here. But the specific mechanism, the how it was all happening, that part was a total black box. So how on earth do you solve a puzzle that's happening deep inside the human brain? Well, you find a model where you can have precise control, where you can observe these tiny neural circuits in action. And in this case, that meant researchers started listening in on some mice. Now, the researchers weren't just looking at serotonin in general, all over the brain. Not at all. They zoomed in on one very specific pathway. You can think of it like a direct line running from the brain's main serotonin factory, the dorsal raphe nucleus, straight to the part that processes sound, the dorsal cochlear nucleus. This was their prime suspect. And the way they designed this experiment was just so clever. First, they mapped out that exact circuit. Then, and this is the truly amazing part, they genetically engineered the mice so they could literally turn this one serotonin pathway on and off, almost like a light switch. After that, they just had to flip the switch on and watch. Did the mice start acting like they were hearing a sound that wasn't actually there? So what happened when they flipped that switch? Well, the results were about as clear as anyone could have hoped for. This was the direct evidence for that link they had suspected for so long. Here's the lead researcher, Lawrence Trussell, just laying it out there. It's so direct. When they activated that specific group of neurons, the mice started to behave in a way that scientists use as a stand-in or a proxy for tinnitus in animal studies. It's a clear signal. So let's just make this crystal clear. They flipped the switch to on, lighting up that serotonin circuit, and boom, the mice started acting as if they were hearing a phantom sound. That is a seriously powerful link. But this is the real clincher. This is the aha moment that proved their theory. Because when they used their tools to turn that very same circuit off, the tinnitus-like behavior dropped way down. They had found a switch that could effectively turn the phantom sound up and down. And this simple chart just shows you that aha moment perfectly. Just look. You've got the control group down here at a low level. Then you see this dramatic spike when the serotonin circuit gets turned on. And finally, look how it drops right back down when they switch it off. It's just a classic cause and effect relationship right there on the screen. So what does all this mean? What does finding this tinnitus switch actually mean for people? Well, the implications are honestly huge. It's forcing us to completely rethink how we treat mood disorders and tinnitus, especially when they show up together. I really love this quote from Lawrence Trussell because it just hits the nail on the head. The brain isn't some simple machine, right? You can't just flood it with a chemical and hope for the best. It's all about an incredibly delicate balance.
All right, let's just quickly recap the big takeaways here. First, we now have really solid evidence that the serotonin-tinnitus connection is real. Second, we know there's a specific brain circuit that acts like a switch for that phantom sound. Third, and this is huge for doctors, it means they have to be really, really careful when prescribing SSRIs to patients who also have tinnitus. But finally, and this is the most exciting part, this discovery opens up a whole new door for brand new kinds of treatment.
And this right here is the big hope that comes out of all this research. The next goal is to develop smarter drugs. I mean, can you imagine a medication that could boost serotonin in the parts of the brain that control mood, while leaving the auditory system completely alone? That's the future we're looking at. And that's really the question this leaves us with, isn't it? By understanding these brain circuits in such incredible detail, are we getting close to creating treatments so precise that they can solve one problem without accidentally making another one worse? I mean, the answer to that question could truly change millions of lives.